Abdul water. Yeah, so thank you so much. It's always nice to be at a Unitarian Universalist church. It's always nice to be at this particular Unitarian Universalist church. It's been a little bit since I've been here. There's been a lot of things that have happened in the world and in the United States. Currently, I am the clinical director at Mental Health America. We have 6 outpatient clinics, 1 substance use clinic, and 5 of those outpatient clinics within a school setting. Previous to that, I was with the federal government for a component called Community Relations Service. And basically, the work that we did was mediate conflict behind the scenes with parties who were having conflict for all kinds of reasons. This was set up post former President JFK's assassination, was a brainchild of his, to basically say that it feels like America may not really have the will to swallow the bitter pill of civil rights reforms. And so we're going to create this component within the federal government which is going to help assist communities and just really go forward within the faith of what we all believe and understand to be our universal humanity, our universal dignity, and our universal connection. So Aaron has been a really great guide of making today happen, and I just was really absorbing the song that was played, The Fire of Commitment. It's just a beautiful, so sometimes my voice is not as lovely as your voice or the music of your voice, so I just like to sometimes just absorb. So please don't see that as I'm not participating. I'm just grounding, and as we spoke about before, just being. I also reflected on what the children were kind of going down to, and Aaron's just lesson on grit. And coincidentally, on the way here, I was listening to a song in Sikhi. Sikhi is, so you will see my necklace here. Sikhi or Sikh, you can always say Sikh or Sikh. But it is, accurately, a Sikh or Sikh is a searcher or a learner. And it is a person who is trying to find the way back to being connected with the source. And what we believe is that everyone belongs to the same source. We just find our way down to earth, and then when we do find our way down to earth, we believe that God gives us ambition, a purpose, a commitment, as we spoke about, to say, you are my people here. And I need you to develop the consciousness around all of, again, the separation and the division and all of these other things become who we kind of, that becomes our identity. And we claim it, but for any Sikh, that voice gets louder and louder and louder, and basically that voice of saying, come back to me. Come back to me. You walked away too far. Right? And when we think about grit, or what we call mitti mitti, right? The song that we were listening to was called Mitti Mitti. And sometimes I just let YouTube kind of go. And this morning it just kind of went, and I was like, this is very interesting. But mitti mitti basically means the dirt. And for lots of Sikhs, lots of Punjabis, and lots of communities here, whether they're agricultural or whether they're not, mitti means it's something sacred. So it's grit. We have another saying called chardi kala, which is relentless optimism, but it is all found in this dirt. And the dirt is sacred. For in this song, they were talking about the sacredness of the dirt, because at one point, everything that we get nourishment from right? We get food from, or where we go is in this miti. But it's also, when we think about things that are happening in the world, we also have to be honest with this, and we have to understand that within the nourishment, there are also injustices. And so this will be kind of a conversation to say we all need to eventually discover our power, whether we forgot about it or whether we kind of are kind of sitting in a place where that's been silenced. But we all need to discover our power and put our hands back in the dirt and realize that once we do, there's going to be good, bad, there's going to be nourishment, but there's also blood in the soil. And if we all can till together, we all can learn our way back to that same creator. So there may feel like a little bit of browbeating within. I sometimes, I was looking at that topic, moving past positivity and kindness. And I know that those, for us, for all of our faiths, right? Kindness, compassion, forgiveness, these are sacred values. These are sacred values across faiths. This is huge for Sikhs. This is huge for Muslims, huge for Christians. Right? I don't want that to kind of be mistaken, but I feel like by this congregation, it will not be. By some, they may say, what do you mean? What are you talking about? Kindness, compassion, forgiveness. And the way that this idea of this, I don't know if we can call this a sermon or a talk or just me just blabbing, but it came to me from a really good friend who I met. She's a reverend. Her name is Reverend Sharon Richer. She wrote a book called For Such a Time as This. She wrote it after her mother was killed by not an affiliated white supremacist, but basically an online radicalized white supremacist. Her mom was one of the people who was killed at Charleston AME Church. And this was nearly 11 years ago now. Nearly 11 years ago. So that particular shooting happened after the Sikh temple shooting. We went down there, and part of the work that I've done over the past 14 years now, is I get to meet these people who are amazing, and just a lot of them, they lean on their faith. And she's one of those people that leans on her faith quite a bit. But the way that this kind of came about was she was frustrated at the 10-year anniversary. So the 10-year anniversary came up. I called her and I was like, hey, we just, the Sikh community is praying for you all. We've been there. We've been through the 10-year anniversary. We know it's hard. We know there's a resurfacing of wounds. Just know that, we are praying for you. Wisconsin is praying for you all, that you're not alone. And she appreciated it. And I'm just like, how are you doing personally? And he's like, Pardeep, I keep getting these questions. And the first question that any media outlet asks us is around, do you forgive the shooter? And I was like, And I was like, there's all, and she spoke about it. Almost like there's this, that almost became kind of an obsessive sort of thought. Do you forgive the shooter? To the point that she, again, like she said, does this absolve society? Does this forgiveness say it's okay what happened? And what does that mean for the Black community to be to continuously be asked that question in Charleston around what happened there? So this comes from that spirit of that question being raised, that frustration, but also I feel like we as a community, as what we call a Sangith, this is about our just realizing our power, to redefine forgiveness and what it means to us. And so I just want to provide a couple of examples of when kindness may have been used as a weapon. When it's used as a weapon, not to heal, but sometimes to hush. When it may be demanded of the oppressed, but maybe not the oppressor. And I want you to think about contemporary times of what is even happening right now, right? When it replaces action with optics and maybe truth with a sense of politeness. I went back to that time when CRS was formed, my old component, during when Dr. King and everybody are marching for civil rights reforms. And there was this call for outside agitators at the time, saying that white moderates often criticize black activists like Dr. King for being too confrontational or moving too fast with reforms. So the weaponization became a call for patience and more polite methods, while ignoring or minimizing the voice and injustice that prompted the protest in the first place. You all have probably heard of Dr. King's letter from Birmingham jail. And again, this is not to browbeat, this is to empower. But he says in the letter that I have almost reached the regrettable conclusion that the Negro's great stumbling block in his stride towards freedom is not the white Christians or the KKK, but the white moderate who is more devoted to order than to justice. Anti-racism conversations in the workplace or schools. Students, employees, educators speak openly about racism. They are often told that their tone is too aggressive or that their comments make people feel uncomfortable. So the weaponization becomes calls for peaceful or civil tone are used to avoid grappling with the painful truth. Response to Black Lives Matter protests. We saw this happening in Minneapolis. We saw this happening other places. We saw this happening here. And again, some of this may be happening in conversations with one another, but maybe some of this conversation is happening on media who is bombarding us with these messages of either civility or compliance. And we're not asking the question of what does compliance or civility mean to this particular group who feels like, maybe they got their knees on their neck, and that's the feelings for such a long time. So after George Floyd's murder, many people supported peaceful demonstrations, but criticized protests that included property damage or roadblocks. And I'm not up here saying that property damage or any of that, or going against the law, is something that I'm saying, hey, so please don't leave out today and say, Pardeep told us to damage property. No. I'm just saying, let's embrace our power and let's speak truth and love at the same time. Okay. Just a few more examples. In the LGBTQ space, what happens? Queer individuals who come out to speak about anti-LGBTQ policies are often told that they're being divisive, inappropriate, or too loud. And again, maybe that's the kindest part. But what happens is kindness and respect for everyone's views are used as smokescreens to suppress discussions about queer rights, effectively prioritizing the comfort of those opposing inclusion. Religious calls for forgiveness without accountability. Spoke a little bit about Reverend Risher's example of the media after 10 years. Right? After hate crimes or public injustices, people may urge victims to forgive and move on as a sign of moral strength. And that's something that she kept bringing up to me was, Pardeep, I haven't truly forgiven the shooter for killing my mother and killing these other people. I feel like a hypocrite. This is what she was saying. And she is a reverend who is attempting to again, like inspire a church, but like she's also having these conversations of, I feel like I'm a moral failure because in my heart of hearts, I truly am not there. Forgiveness is used to bypass meaningful consequences or structural change, and it pressures the harm to comfort those who harm them. Campus protests over Gaza. We all saw this in 2024, 2025. Students across the U.S. organized encampments and protests calling for ceasefires and divestment from companies tied to the war in Gaza. The weaponization of that becomes public and political debate, often focused more on whether the protests were disruptive, uncivil, or made people uncomfortable rather than on the humanitarian crisis itself. The result, many campuses responded with police actions, arrests, disciplinary actions, measures against students. Again, the pattern we're all kind of seeing, the conversation shifts from the content of the protests, what are people trying to say, to the tone, methods, and inconvenience of the protests. And this, again, this doesn't mean that there isn't enough suffering that is happening with both the Israeli people and the Palestinian people. But this is to come back and say, we need to have better conversations. We need to have more honest conversations. And if we don't, there will be people that suffer because we will look at the tone, the methods, and the inconvenience of the protests rather than the content. We have seen immigration and community resistance that is happening. Grassroots networks in places like Minneapolis organized to resist aggressive immigration enforcement and support vulnerable families. Again, the weaponization becomes activists and artists reported being labeled as political, threatening, or inappropriate simply for speaking out or creating resistance-themed art. Again, the pattern, moral resistance is being framed as disruptive, divisive, unpatriotic, un-American, all of those things rather than the response of fear, detention, and policy harm. And again, I'm trying to be non-political with this. I look at it and as a simple therapist. I look at Megan Good's example, and what I saw on TV, what I saw on video, was a woman who was being surrounded by both masked and unmasked intimidation. And instead of us even having a conversation about, here's a woman who's being surrounded by all of these men with guns. Could that not be a fear, fight response of, I need to get the heck out of here? And somehow, some way, we looked at it as, or the narrative became that she was trying to run over this particular person. Being a cop for 5 years, patrolling the roughest part of Milwaukee, Wisconsin, which is the inner city, having 2 arrests a day, being in a place where I saw guns, knives, drugs, all kinds of stuff. I can tell you that any police officer worth any of his fabric and will tell you the honest truth, that they will say that was a misuse of power. At the least. At the most, that was just homicide. That was just murder. But nobody spoke about how this could have been, hey, this woman is scared. What I'm saying is that we're not getting to the point of what we actually need to get to because we're simply just not even being honest with ourselves. For us in our community, we really wanted to lean in on our faith. When 7 people lost their lives, and one of those people, that's what was my father and temple president, I wanted to really be honest with how do we heal? What does healing look like to us? we leaned on the courage of our spiritual teachers. Guru Nanak was the founder of Sikhism. He spoke up against systems of injustice. At that time, 500 years ago, people were being divided by caste. Caste, if for those that don't know what like a caste is, it's something that you're kind of born into, kind of a social economic. If I was born into a certain caste, and why caste and class are just a little bit different, is that many people believe that once you're born into a certain caste, you had to die before you could actually move up in the socioeconomic stratosphere. So if you lived a good life in a certain low caste, it was cemented into you that, hey, live that life in that lowest caste, and then maybe next lifetime you can actually move up. Sikhism went against that and said, no, we don't care who you are. We don't care if you're king, queen, if you're born in the highest caste or you're born in the lowest caste. You are equal in the eyes of God. And so 500 years ago, Sikhism was founded to kind of be a social justice religion in India. And then as Guru Nanak was founding this, he used intentional lessons. But this is not something that is unique to our faith. This is something that is part of every faith that I'm the former director of the Interfaith Conference, and I hear stories, and not that every faith is the same. One time, a Catholic elder came up to me and said, Pardeep, we don't belong to, like, every religion isn't the same. I'm like, I get that, sir. I won't say who it was. I'm like, I get that, sir. I'm like, we believe in a different way. I'm like, for sure. So people, don't go out there professing that this is just one religion, one world religion, something to that point. And I was like, no, but I think that all of our religions do call us to love. I think all of our faiths do call us to connect and see the dignity of each other. So can I do that? For sure, for sure. But the Christian tradition, right? Jesus was overturning tables. He was rebellious. That's the Jesus I know. You know, I think we had a conversation earlier about everybody, and the wonderful thing is that I get to see a lot of people who have had this sort of journey. And sometimes I hear people say, well, our belief or our, like, and almost, I'm like, the Unitarian belief, I think, is core, so core to who Jesus was inspiring us to be like. Like, this is the Jesus I know. So the other Jesus, I know there's a lot of conversations about that, especially right now. But this is the Jesus I know. I know the Jesus that overturned tables because he saw the way that God was being used for a weapon of separation rather than unification. The Jewish tradition, prophets spoke truth to kings. Muslim tradition, Prophet Muhammad stood against tribal injustice and exploitation. All across interfaith traditions, we see the same lesson. Genuine faith has always been about truth paired with care and love, especially love for the marginalized and oppressed. Taking those lessons and understanding it on August 5th of 2012 and in the aftermath, there was a lot of people who, again, had that conversation about your community is so kind, your community is so forgiving. And while that is all definitely true, forgiveness to us also became a form of vengeance. Not against people, but against an energy of division. The person who committed that atrocity was draped in division and supremacy, power supremacy. I won't even say white supremacy. I think it's just power supremacy now at this point, of people who just don't, for whatever reason, they feel empty. And so they look towards these superficial understandings of what power is. And for them, it's not power with, it's power over. And the harm that has caused. And as this person tried to embody this by killing 7 people, we as a community were asked, well, how will you respond? And this is something that we weren't just asked. You all are being asked this. How will we respond? What will kindness, what will forgiveness, will they be absolvements of saying, okay, we just got to stay civil. We just have to, and what does that mean? So the balance for us really became about how do we balance both compassion and truth. Another big thing in Sikhism was the throwing out of dichotomies and the understanding of duality. One of the big phrases in Sikhi, I love it because I get to chew on it and contemplate it a little bit. It's one of the least known philosophical understandings, but one of the big phrases is that I am not good and you are not bad. And it goes the other way too. You are not good and I am not bad. And part of it goes into, so we're all fighting this thing, right? We're all fighting inside. But what I love about it is that compassion and truth can all exist all at the same time. You can have it. And that's where, for us, the healing really, the healing really happened. We have another phrase called Sarbat Pala, which is something that we say before we leave. So today, with you all, I'm going to say this phrase before. So at the Gurdwara in Oak Creek, there's another Gurdwara in Brookfield, one in Madison, one in Appleton. So you have four temples in Wisconsin, and this is said at every temple inside, just every one. But before you leave for the day, and I never understood why we would say something like this until I understood why we say something like this, right? It just doesn't make sense to you as a child. You're like, they just keep bringing me here, and then they keep telling me this thing. But trust me, at some point, right? Whether it's about grit, it will make sense to these young people, and they will be like, I understand now. I got it. So the saying is, Nanak Naam Chardi Kala Tere Bane Sarbata Pala. And Sarbata Pala was like the saying of a well-being for all, despite any difference. And this was, and then I was like, well, why was this so sacred to Sikhs? So this necklace right here reminds me of oneness, right? It's the one that says that we're all connected. We're all, if I see somebody and I'm like, oh, I don't see the humanity in that person or just the humanness in that person, then I'm a hypocrite. So this one kind of reminds me of, dude, you might be upset at somebody. You might be like, that person is nothing like me. Whatever reason. But this one tells me that, okay, you gotta challenge yourself. And I think for the shooter, that was a huge challenge for us. Did I still see the dignity in the shooter? And I could tell you right now, 14 years later, I do. I genuinely do. I see the lack of humanity in what the shooter did. But if I make it about a single person and don't understand it about a society, then we end up failing, right? So as hard as that may be, especially with current political leadership, right? We have to see it about a society. We have to see, well, how are we where we are? But it comes back to that saying of a well-being for all, right? That's Sarbat Pala. And what the whole phrase means, Nanak Naam Chardi Kala Tere Bane Sarbat Pala, which brings me back to that lesson of grit, right? Chardi Kala means relentless optimism, right? Not relentless, and I've been questioned on this theological approach by other Sikhs too, and the younger Sikhs who would say, Pardeep, that seems naive, this relentless optimism thing. It feels naive. I'm like, yeah, because you took it out of context. But before we leave any Sikh temple for any service, they say this and then they leave, right? Because it launches you into a mission. It launches you into a place where you say, this can't stop at, 11 o'clock on Sunday, right? This has to continue for the next week. And then when I come back, I need to replenish again. And I need to carry this forward to the next week. This phrase, this grit, asks us invites us to also say, is our kindness protecting comfort? Right? That's something that I want everybody to is your kindness protecting, and whose comfort are you protecting? And can I not have this conversation that I need to with this particular person because somehow, some way, their comfort will mean that I don't have them as a friend anymore or a relationship anymore? Right? Is it helping us avoid hard conversations? Is it helping us grow closer to the truth? Is it courageous? Is it honest? And does it make room for justice, healing, and dignity for all? Those are the questions that we had to ask ourselves after the shooting. And when we come back to that saying, Nanak Naam Chardi Kala Tere Bane Sarbat Tapala, which means in its totality, right? In its totality means we shall be relentlessly optimistic and work for the peace and prosperity of all mankind, of all people. And I'm like, does that make sense to you all? Like we have these conversations with the youth, and they're like, yeah, that makes more sense. Because sometimes and again, what we started off with was that it can be, for us, we believe that God is the source, the energy, is all powerful. And if wanted to, could have made us all like one another. Right? But it is diversity that is the strength. It is our ability to say, anybody can be nice to, and I challenge our own congregation with this. And I'm sometimes a pain in the butt to my father-in-law. We had a conversation the other day. I was like, it's easy to be nice, to be kind, to be compassionate, to see the betterment in other people who wear turbans, in other people who pray the same, who worship the same. But that's maybe not what our mission was. If our God could have been powerful enough to say, hey, all of you all look the same, pray the same, talk the same, walk the same, eat the same, but then instituted diversity and said, let me make it a little bit tougher on you, right? Because I want you to exercise a deeper part of yourself, not the reptilian brain that says, oh, I'm in survival mode and I need to find somebody who looks like me, right? Walks like me, talks like me, dresses like me. I need you to go past that and see humanity in the person that doesn't. And then when you do that, I feel like you've arrived. You can come back. I will welcome you with open arms. Okay? So that was the mission that we had, was not only connection, but what does reconnection mean? I want to say thank you. Thank you. Because we were never alone. We were never alone after August 5th. I was never alone. What I've learned from you all. I would have loved to say that I knew that previous to August 5th, 2012. But you all have been a big part of my journey. You all have been a big part of the Sikh community's journey back. So on behalf of the Sikh community, on behalf of us, thank you for teaching us what reconnection really feels like and looks like. And God bless you all today. God bless us going forward. Thank you so much. I was telling Aaron, I said, I have to get back to snow shoveling. I didn't know it was going to snow this morning. So I'll join you for a little bit because I can't say no to a good cup of coffee. And we'll talk for a little bit. But then my mom is like, you got to go back and shovel and get all the properties done. So on behalf of all of us, thank you so much, and God bless you all.